Welcome to the podcast where we dive into the strategies that transform businesses and lives. Today, we're thrilled to have Phil Rosebrook, a titan in the disaster restoration industry, with us. With over 38 years of experience, Phil has mastered the art of organizational change and sustainable business planning. He's not just a leader, he's a visionary who has helped hundreds of companies achieve their dreams. Stay tuned as Phil reveals the secrets to building a business that not only survives, but thrives in any market. Whether you're looking to enhance your corporate infrastructure or develop a winning strategy, this episode is packed with insights you won't want to miss. Let's get started. Hey, Phil, thanks a lot for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. It's an absolute honor to talk to you.
Thank you very much. I'm so excited to be here. This is a great conversation. I love the ideas you've thrown out for some discussion. So I'm excited.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
And you had mentioned before we hopped on the show here, honestly, I think each one of these could take a show of its own. So there's a lot here. And with your experience and how long you've been doing this for and the vast experience you have, I think we could unpack a lot there. But I promise we will stick to about 45 minutes to an hour. And we'll just kind of lightly tease all these and, brush past them a little bit, and then maybe at a later date we'll go more in depth. Sound good to you?
That sounds fantastic. Sounds like you just limited me, but that's all right. We'll be all right.
No. Take as much time as you want. So, I from my understanding, you're an absolute expert at operations, financials, which is huge. And admittedly, I have just kind of started to really fall into financials and how big of a tool it is. And then, of course, exits. So trying to exit your company and increasing EBITDA, which I'm sure we'll go over, and trying to maximize that potential there. So again, we'll kind of go through them all here. But the holy grail, I think, with this industry, especially with this industry, because it's very hard to systemize this business, is how do you get it to run on its own, right? Or how do you get it to run independently without you? I know, speaking from experience, when I ran my restoration company, I would hire people, and then they would either quit with or without a 2 weeks notice, or maybe someone calls off, and now I'm, canceling all my meetings or my plans for that day or that evening, and I'm sucking water in the basement. So that's the challenge, as I know you are aware of. So how do we get out of that rut, and how do we start getting this business to kind of run without us?
Yeah, good question. That's something I find quite frequently. Actually, I'm going to think back to about probably my third client. This is back in 1998. And I remember he was about my age, and so we'd spend all day together, and then we'd go out to have dinner and a couple of drinks after work. And he got a call. He's like, "Phil, I'm sorry. I'm going to take you over. I'm going to take you back, and I got to get out. I got water damage. My crews are busy, and it's just me." I'm like, "Oh, good. Give me something to wear. I'm out with you. Let's go." So I did a water damage in Jacksonville, Florida. That was good. So big challenges all around this, but let's talk about just core fundamental things. The first thing is, if we want to run without us, we have to think, what does this look like? And then have other people think about us as well. So it starts with this deliberate strategic plan on what our business is and where it's going. And then we can bring other people into that plan. And so I'm going to break it down to about 7 steps, and then we can break each one of those apart. Probably not, but
Love it.
So the very first thing is we got to start with the foundational issue of who we are and what our business is. So a strong look in, and this may sound really esoteric, into our mission, vision, values, goals. Like, what do we stand for? And if that's what we stand for, we can hand it off to other people, and we can trust that they're going to take care of our stuff like we would. We can hire to that. We can build our plans around it. We can bring clients on around that. All of that stuff makes sense. And so if you don't do that, now all of a sudden, your business has the potential to be chaos because you have no foundational structure to build off of. And so when we have shared values, we have shared goals, everybody knows. And it's funny, I go into a lot of companies and they'll have their mission stuck to the wall. They'll have maybe their core values, something like that. And it's on a plaque on the wall. And I'll take it down, I'll set it upside down, and I'll ask the employees, tell me about your company. What are your mission? What are your values? I see we got 3 core values. And then and you get it's rare to find a company that will first do that and then second communicate it and third live it. And so that's the very first.
All the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because there's a lot of assumptions in there. Yeah, it just people, you assume they're doing things, and they assume they're doing the right things too, and not always the case.
And,
So
and
I can
to
go
interrupt you real quick too, Phil.
Yeah.
I've noticed too that those mean different things to different people too, right? I mean, you have to very specifically define what those are and what those look like, because great customer service or whatever it might be is very differently defined for different people and how they want to be communicated. So anyway.
Yeah, no. Well, I wasn't going to do it, but I'm going to go with this. Is how we get into our 4-hour conversation. There was so I wrote an article. It was back when my daughter was really young, so it was probably 20 years ago. And it was I wrote it for Cleaning and Restoration. I received the Golden Quill Award for it, and the article was called "It's Obvious, Isn't It?" And it was built off of, I was in church on Sunday, and there was a homily of the priest was trying to figure out direction and awareness and everybody on the same page. And so this church is sitting on right on the freeway. It goes north and south from Mexico to Canada, outside the door of the freeway, or outside the door of the church. And so he said, let's do an experiment here. And he said, I want everybody to close your eyes. We got a compass here, and I want everybody to point to the north. I'm like, I know which way north is. We got the freeway out here. I got good metrics, good guides. And so we all open up our eyes. Everybody's doing this. Yeah. And, here, I'm thinking I'm pretty smart. What I didn't pay attention to was the fact that the freeway had turned east-west about a mile before the church, and then it went back north again. I was pointing due west and thinking I knew everything was right, and I was wrong. And I think that too often we think we know, we think our employees know, but do we know we know? And so it's that communication process to reinforce, to set goals, to set celebrations, to put awards in place, to do things that reinforce. I had a guy I worked with in Salt Lake City, and one of the things he did is every meeting he had, and he was a company that when I was there, this is a crazy story, it grew from 18 to 36 million in 2 years.
Jeez.
One of the things, it was chaos. It was chaos, but it was fun. But every single company meeting he had one every month, he would talk about his core values. He would say, okay, this is what we stand for. And he would maybe exemplify one of them and dig into it. And they were painted on the walls. There was banners in the office. There were things that, so they truly believed it. Not only did they say it, but they believed it. And so that allowed this chaos growth, which he couldn't have done on himself. So that's a classic case of you got to have a team around you that's doing it. So let's go number two. My number two on this list, we need solid metrics. We really have to have good numbers, good quantifiable numbers, so we're not guessing at things. Because cash can slip away, profits can slip away, clients can slip away. If you don't have good data, then you can't make good strategic decisions in your business. You're making lots and lots and lots of assumptions. And so we got, I think the probably one of the important elements, and there's lots of software out there, and so whether you have Dash or you have Restoration Manager or you've got PSA, that's a good start. QuickBooks, Sage, any of your financial metrics, those things should all feed together, give us really quantifiable numbers so we know where we're going, how we're doing, and how people are doing, so we become an objective manager, not a subjective manager. If you find yourself saying, it seems to me, kind of, like, yeah, are you doing a good job? Yeah, I think so. You don't have any clue because you're just going everything on your gut feel. And sometimes gut feel is good until you want to grow. And now it's you're the funnel again, everything because it's gut feel. So we've got, you've got your mission, vision, values. We've got good metrics. Now we need good communication. We have to have company-wide meetings. We have to have departmental meetings. We have to talk out to the field. We have to have the field talking back to the office. Those communication metrics are deliberate, planned, and makes us aware of what's happening and in control. And so, again, no assumptions on what's happening. We know what's happening, and we're clear on those things. And I think in all of that, it allows us to build something that everybody's a part of. And so it's the communication, deliberate communication that, again, we don't want to be the middle of everything, so we have to be able to see it without having to go call and say, what's going on with Mrs. Jones? Yep. And if you know at the job level what's going on all the jobs in your company, it's a great sign that you are such a funnel in your company that it's not going to grow without you. It is you. And so those are good tests, but you have to have the first steps in there first. And then the next thing is it's leadership. It's good people doing the right thing at the right place at the right time. So if you
That's
don't
hard
have,
to find. Very challenging to find that. Yeah.
It is, and I think in knowing where we're going with this conversation, we can talk about that in a little bit. But it is hard to find. But there's good people everywhere, and there's people that want to be a part of something that's bigger than them. There's people that will be motivated to be drawn into your company. But if they get into your company and they find that there's not a lot of good people there, they're not going to stick around. And so finding good people,
run with them.
You know what? They don't want to also show up and not know what they're doing and not know how they're performing or what's expected of them. Right. And so all of those things will help you attract really good people, and good people will bring in more good people, and they'll help retain them. And so those are all elements of this company that's going to grow without you, because you have to have something that good people will be attracted to. You have to pay them well. But if you've got good metrics, you can pay them extremely well, because you can give them performance-based incentives. All of that stuff will make sense, because now it's a business by plan as opposed to by accident. So we have good people, and then what I suggest you put a leadership team together. Who are your top 5 people that you're going to battle with? The ones that are going to help you craft out what you're doing, where you're going, how you're doing, and then have them help develop the plan. Here's the foundation we built on. Now, where are we going, and how are we going to get there? And we talk about that. I love the EOS model. And you could take that, the entrepreneurial operating system, but there could be the Rockefeller system, whatever. Something that has
heard
a
of it.
really...
I'm not familiar with it, but I've heard of it. Yeah.
What it does is helps you take long-term vision. I'm going to go somewhere in 5 years or 10 years. And then you ultimately break that down to my weekly activities that tell me I'm getting where I'm going. Because if you're only looking 5 years out, then it's going to be tough to say, how are we doing? And so if we broke that down into our 90-day goals then are into weekly activities. We have a leadership team sitting around talking about how are we doing on moving forward. And maybe it's not weekly. Maybe it could be a couple times a month. But something where we have our plan and then we hold each other accountable. So that's what a leadership team will do. And when you have a leadership team, once again, it's not you, it's us. When it becomes us, it makes it a whole lot easier. And that's how you decouple yourself from that. And there with 3 of my notes here is with your leadership team, you know where you're going.
Yep.
The employees are empowered, and then finally we're all accountable. We're accountable to each other. They're not accountable for themselves. We're all accountable along the way. And so when you have those things, it becomes a whole lot more predictable. Organizational structure would be the next. We know where we're going. We have our communication. We have our financials. We've got our leadership team. Now we have an organizational structure. And I'm a big fan of organizational hierarchy, because when you as the owner, you don't realize it, but you've got so much power and control in what you say and do that it impacts everybody working in the company. And if you start going out to the technicians and telling them what to do, my superintendents and the jobs, if I'm the one putting myself in there, I've just now completely abdicated all of the power of the people that are managing those people. Yes. And so I've got an organizational structure. I respect the organizational hierarchy. And then we have clear objectives and KPIs and all of that stuff that fit in there. And it makes it a whole lot easier. Now, all of a sudden, this becomes like a machine that's working, and you can start tracking the performance and the metrics, and it starts becoming fun. Strategic planning, the financial plan and support. And so financial planning goes into that strategic planning, having a good thing how big you are. You get a CFO, but if you're smaller, you do a fractional CFO, or you just get a good full cycle bookkeeper that produces numbers that tell you exactly what's going on in your business. And one of the things with a bookkeeper, I like somebody who not just pushes print, but pushes maybe pushes email to you, send, but they look at it first and make sure it makes sense. And I want people working for me that at least are thinking about what they're doing, about the product they're delivering, and they can give me some commentary. And we'll talk a lot about financial stuff later, and some of the reports we should be looking at. But at the same time, we need to have that really good financial plan. So as we build this, we're not building something that's too top heavy or too foundation light, and that everybody in each department is contributing and they know what their role is in helping achieve profitability in the company. And I think here's the real kicker, and I think this is extremely important, and this is my item 7.5, is you've got to be the kind of person that people want to work for. So look in the mirror and figure out what kind of boss you are, what kind of person you are. Do you have the values that you're asking your company to have, your employees to have?
Yes.
You got a whole bunch of people working for you that have got to have people that want you to be successful. They got to be excited when they hear you go on a nice trip, or you bought a new car, or you live in a nice house. Whatever those things, they can't be fighting against you with that. They have to be wanting your support because they care about and like you. And if you've done all of those things, now you've built this foundation, you got the accountability, you got the structure, you got the support, you're going to see it's a whole lot easier to decouple yourself from daily operations. You could go on a trip for a month or 6 months if you wanted with that vehicle you just built. You're probably going to stay in touch with it. You want to give some feedback, and you want to be involved to some degree. But at the same time, all of those elements, it's not easy. It's not easy building this company.
It takes time.
It takes time and deliberate activity. Like I had to think about this and create it. When I do that, then it makes it a whole bit easier.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I'm going to shift gears a little bit, but certainly topical. A lot of those tenants, the 7 tenants, especially the second tenant, is the financial portion of it, and it just creates such transparency. There's some KPIs and holding people accountable financially. So it all kind of wraps into one. I have noticed, and this is just for me, I always reviewed my P&Ls every month, right? So every month I'd close out my books and I would review my P&L, and it would tell me, okay, what's the status of the business? Did we make money? Did we lose money? Going to the next month, are we cash heavy? Are we cash poor? What do we need to do? What moves do we need to make? It was very short-sighted, right? It was a very small window of time. I have now since projected 2 years out, so a 24-month period. And I tell you what, Phil, I don't know if you've used it yet, but there's a Claude plugin to Excel. And you can basically type in whatever you want, act as a CFO, and it builds you this beautiful spreadsheet. Now, you need to have some level of understanding of spreadsheets and finances, so it's not going to completely take everything away. But what's great is you can say, hey, if I pull this lever, what does my business look like 2 years from now? If my KPI adjusts for the better or for the worse, what does that look like, and what does my hiring look like? So it really is just a way for me to look out into the future and knowing what is a direct result of my decisions today. But I want you to kind of talk about when you're a smaller operation, 1 to 2 million, still very busy, still very robust, but the P&L is somewhat still manageable, right? When you're starting to get in those upper echelon, which is where the 7 tenants really kind of come into place, we have a leadership team. What kind of key performance indicators, or what financial instruments should they be looking at, and how often to judge their success, and what should they be doing going forward as well to understand where their business is leading to?
Okay, so the first thing that I've found is that most companies, especially let's go to that 1 to 2 million, and people build on this. And I think this is a challenge where you build a company going to 10 million. They built their $10 million company on a $2 million foundation, and it doesn't make sense anymore. And so if you were to build a house like that, it would fail. A building like that, it would fail. And so if you look at your P&L, a lot of people look at it, it doesn't make sense. The first thing they're going to do is they're just going to look at top line, what's my revenue, bottom line, what was my profit. And if you find, and most people, if that's all they're doing, they're going to find that it looks like this. It's going up and down and up and down.
I was guilty of that. you're
because
you're
they don't.
To me. Yep.
Yeah, because we don't recognize revenue right. So let's just say we get a $100,000 job. We're a $1 million company. We get a $100,000 job. It's a big job. Some people are going to book that revenue the first day they got the job. And so now you show $100,000 profit, but you have no cost. But now you spent, and let's say, because it makes it easier to think about, it's an emergency job, a $100,000 emergency job. If you're $1 million, you're probably not getting a lot of those. But it makes my story a little easier to understand.
Easy math.
We got the job on the 28th of the month. We booked the revenue. We get $100,000 profit. The next month, we do $50,000 worth of work costs to produce that job, and we have $50,000 of costs and no revenue. 1 month we made $100,000 net profit on one job. The next month we lost $50,000. We didn't put the numbers together to make sense. We have to, if we're booking revenue, what are our commensurate costs? What's our percentage of costs that we've received. We need to make sense of our numbers so they make sense to us, so they become predictable. And so how we book revenue would be extremely important. I do have some tools I'll talk about later that kind of walk you through that. However, the first step in anything is making sure your numbers make sense and that you can explain them and justify them, and that they're clearly a clear reflection of what just happened in your business. And that's why I look at some of the other things we're going to go into it too. We'll look high level, and I call these things just they're actually very reactive reports. They're things that show what happened in the past. So I liken this to driving a car. And so the thing you just asked me about, that's what I'm going to look in my rearview mirror and say, where did we go? Where did we just go? And those are your real predictive reports, which is your profit and loss, not predictive, your profit and loss, your balance sheet, your accounts receivable, your aging accounts receivable, your aging accounts payable, your statements of cash. All of those things are going to tell us what just happened. And so that's good. But what I want to do is I'm going to look at my predictive reports and tell me what I'm doing right now. Like, what's in front of my windshield? Where am I driving? So when I look back and I verify, did I just go where I thought I went? And so those windshield reports, I think I'm looking at those on a daily or weekly basis, depending on how much they change and how relevant my information is. So I'm going to know my intake.
Phil, I'm sorry. What are in those windshield reports? What's exactly in those?
Here we go. This is what I'm talking. Yeah.
Am I getting in front of you?
No, I didn't.
Sorry.
You are. No. I'm about ready to jump into this. This is perfect. Okay. So my windshield reports, the first one is I'm looking at my intakes. How often is that phone ringing every day, and how many calls am I getting?
Yeah.
Then I want to know what my closing ratio is. How many of those calls did I close? I'm going to know what my average job size is, which is kind of predictive. I'm going to go look at my last quarter and say my average job size was $9,000. And I got 10 jobs. I got $90,000 worth of work this week. It tells me what's going to happen, and it's going to be predictable what my financials will look like a month or 2 months down the road, depending on the type of work I'm doing. I'm going to look at my invoicing. I'm going to compare my invoicing by different teams or departments or superintendents or project managers. It allows me to know how they're doing and also what kind of revenue we should be generating. Then I definitely want to be looking at my job costing reports. I want to have timely job costing as often and as frequent as I can have accurate numbers. When we had our restoration company, we played around with having people come in overnight to be answering phones and then doing data entry. And that way when we sat, this is a long time ago, you can do it much faster in other ways, but you sit at your desk in the morning and your job cost report was current to the day before. You knew exactly where you were in every single job. Wow. So if I know all of those things, then I can look and say, and then maybe a quality service or some sort of a subjective element. Not even subjective. It's the softer side of it. Did the customer, were they happy with us? If we start seeing all those
like
things,
an NPS type deal. Yeah.
Yeah, we know where we're going. I love that NPS metric, by the way. I think that's a fantastic, fantastic model. But so if I know my invoicing, I generally know what my revenue is going to be. If I know my job costs, I generally know what my gross profit margin is going to be. And if I know my overhead, which I would that doesn't change a whole lot, I know what my net profit should be. And so I'm looking forward, and I know what I'm going to see at the end of the month or next month because I've got my predictive reports, and I can effectively manage those things. My cash is going to be tied to my collections and my accounts receivable. What kind of cash churn are we doing every single day, week, whatever the metric would be? And then I also want to look at like the days on my receivable and have that as a metric, put it up on the wall, and have my collections team looking at that. So all those things that gives us that tells us really accurately where we're going and where we are, and where we were.
With those reports, are you looking at those as an accrual accounting basis or a cash accounting basis, and why and what? And maybe for someone who doesn't know what those two accounting methods are, could you explain those two?
Sure. Okay. So a cash basis is money in, money out, and if we spent money, it hits a P&L, and so. Typically, what people are looking at a cash basis statement, if you'll know, because you're going to look at your balance sheet, and your balance sheet is going to have accounts receivable, accounts payable on it if it's accrual, and if it's not, then there's going to be no kind of spending over time on it. It's just going to be what happened and what checks went out and what checks went into your company. The companies that are cash poor, that's a really great way to look at your P&L because that's how you're paying your bills. Companies that are really want to know how things are going more globally are going to look at an accrual, because what it's going to do is, this is what it really cost me to do my business. So this month, so I'm going to try to put an accrued part of my revenue. I've got my costs of $10,000. What would my revenue been for that $10,000 based on a percentage completion? Again, I have a tool that I'll talk about later that kind of walks you through more deliberately on that. But also maybe it's a long-term, you get a bill for your insurance. I know I just paid my bill in May. And so I can have for most restoration companies, it's a huge expense. I might have a $50,000 expense in March. But really, I'm using it over 12 months, and so I'm showing bits and pieces of that every month as I use that. I got prepaids, and I've got my accrued amounts. So it works on revenue and costs, which show you more accurately what the real cost of running my business this month was, not what money went out in and out of the company. So it's more of a yardstick of performance for my operations as opposed to my cash coming in and out of the business. And so the cash part of it will help me really stay focused on collecting money, because I know, gosh, if I don't get this money in the door, then I'm going to be showing a loss on my P&L, and I'm also going to have a negative bank account. So,
and that's my position with restoration specifically, right? Is accrual, and you're the expert here, so I'm just kind of throwing something out there, and I could be making myself look very ignorant here. But accrual is very challenging because the collections process and the collection timing is so different, right? You can have a TPA where the collection process is very predictable, where if the check's in the customer's hands or a third-party check, it could be 30, 60, 90 days. So in order to account for that and to do projections, it's very challenging, and it could create cash flow issues if you're spending faster than you are collecting. But again, I know once you get usually when you're smaller, it's more of a cash basis. Once you get larger, it's more of a accrual basis. So I was curious to know what your thoughts are on that.
So they're different tools. So it depends on what I want to look at my P&L for. If I'm looking at my profit and loss statement to say, how did I do last month? Like performance. Was my performance right on? Am I profitable? Because if I'm going to sell my company, I definitely am doing accrual because I want to get credit for the work that I've done but I haven't invoiced for. But if I'm paying taxes, I'm definitely going with cash. Yeah, because I'm not going to pay taxes on something I didn't get unless I'm now at 50 million and I have to. So it depends on the purpose that I'm looking for it. If I'm going to present them to my bank because I got a line of credit, I'm going to present my accrual statement, and I'm going to have to go to explain those things. So it depends on the purpose that you're looking at it for.
Interesting.
And for what you're talking about, I don't want to get too nuanced in financials and accounting, but you can also it depends on how you track and measure the profitability of the revenue. And so there's some companies that will take and do they call it a completed project method. And so they hold all their costs and they hold all their revenue on the balance sheet until the job is 100% done, and then they move it all over together. But it doesn't do anything for measuring my cash because those are different things. I'm going to have maybe different metrics that measure my cash. I'm going to be looking at my accounts receivable report every single week or maybe every day, and knowing that if a job is accounts receivable, cash, one of the biggest problems in restoration companies. I worked with a gal, Linda Case, and she wrote a book, Making and Managing Money, and she worked particularly with remodelers. She did a presentation I attended once, and she said she was talking about financials or production. She's talking about production and job management, but she said when production becomes a system, it ceases to be a problem. I have a friend who was a sales trainer. He said the same thing. When sales becomes a system, it ceases to be a problem. So when cash becomes a system, it ceases to be a problem. Work through the system, and you should get predictable results. Because systems are they're never about the process you're doing. They're about the result you're getting. You want to achieve predictable results on the other side. So create a system that gets you predictable results on cash. So manage the system, and you're going to manage the cash. And if you want to look at your P&L for performance, I really want to know, how did I do last month? But it doesn't tell me about my cash. It just says, how did I do with my operations last month? So they're different functions. But for cash, I'm going to be looking at somebody's looking at my accounts receivable every single day. If I send an invoice out the door, part of my system is the within 2 days of that invoice going out the door, somebody's picked up the phone and they're calling the adjuster and the customer. Did you get the invoice? Do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any questions? Yeah. If I'm calling the adjuster, hey, when do you think that's going to go out? And is that going to be a three-party payable check? Or is that going to be sent? Is that going to be two parties? Is it going to be sent to me, or is it going to be sent to the customer? I want to know all that stuff early, and then I'm gonna maybe go back a couple. So Alex Duda with Albeware, he wrote a book, The Restoration Millionaire, and in there he had talked about their philosophy and their business, Rome Exterra, was they tell the customer all along, we get paid within 30 days in every one of our jobs. Just so you know, they tell them that the day 1 to day 30. Manage cash, make it a system. When you make it a system, you're going to start getting predictable results. And so my P&L doesn't reflect my focus on cash throughout the time that I'm trying to collect my cash. All it did tell me where I went and what I did. And for me, my personal opinion is I really just want to look at my performance. And then I'm studying my cash on my accounts receivable, and I'm looking at days and turns on my receivable or days on receivable, and I'm holding people accountable to that.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate that, because I was under the impression that it was one or the other. That and now I understand it a lot better. So that's helpful. So
it's a print option, Mike. But it's a print option on when you run your reports, so it's there.
Yeah.
The accrual
is there.
Yeah, the accrual takes a little harder because you have to actually figure out your percentage of work completed during that month. Like so it's a worksheet. It takes a little bit longer, but then you're just going to choose: am I going to print cash? Am I going to print my accrual? And that's how it works.
So there's two camps. One that's looking for an exit. I mean, obviously there's gray areas as well, but it's more of a legacy operator as well. So for those who are kind of seeing, hey, there's a lot of private equity that's getting injected in this space, and restoration companies are getting gobbled up. If I'm looking at selling my restoration company within the next 3 years, what do I need to be looking at right now? And maybe you can kind of work in some of your financial systems that you talked about earlier, and financial models and programs that you have to assist with that. So what should we be doing now, and what mistakes are you also seeing, I guess, going forward as well?
Okay. So the first thing, I think of it like a car. I've done a presentation this a number of times before, and you're selling a car. When somebody's buying a car, they want to go look at the showroom model. They want it new and shiny and clean and sparkly. Yep. It's new car clean. And a lot of people think about selling their business like this car, and they've got this is beautiful. This thing has so much potential. Man, this is a classic. All it needs is a new coat of paint. You need to wash it. You gotta polish it up, and and nobody wants that car. Nobody wants that car. They want the one that makes them feel good. The one that the one that's functional and can do something for them. And so I think the mistake, the mistake people make is they're like, okay, this really has so much potential. And they also need to realize that people, when they're buying companies, and we can go PE or we can go private sellers or private buyers, I think it's the same story. People want value. They don't want to buy your job, by the way. If you get a job and it's a nightmare and you show up and you're working 80 hours a week, nobody's buying that. People want to buy a predictable revenue stream. And if we go through and we talk about how do they create a business that runs without you, if you went through those steps, I promise you're going to have a very, very profitable, saleable business, because people want to buy a cash, like an income stream. They want to buy what your company can do for them. And so those things are those are really important elements, and you want to think about that and say, okay, what am I selling? I'm selling a cash flow stream that somebody's going to then pay me for, and maybe there could be lifestyle, it could be esteem, it could be a lot of other things, but start looking at what the value is. So it's neat. I come up with my 7 things again. I don't know how 7 is, but it's a good number. So at 7.5, the 0.5 was make sure that it's the new car. It's the new car that people are buying. It's not the potential. When I talk with equity companies and when I talk with other buyers, one of the questions they'll ask me is, tell me about the number 2. I think it's I'm going to leverage it out and say it's bigger than that. It's the leadership team. But if you as the owner are going to go away because you're now going to get the money and you're going to go buy your sailboat and you're going to sail off in the Mediterranean, you're not going to be around anymore. So somebody did they buy your job or did they buy your company? So who's your number two? What's your leadership team? And are they tied into the business, or as soon as the new buyer comes in, are they leaving? So that's the biggest question I get from any equity company when I'm ever talking with them. And so let's just say from any buyer, they want to know, how's the business going to operate without the owner? And so who's your number two? Do you have a good solid team? Are they tied into the company? And will they be long-term players for you? The client dependence. This one's really surprising. I've worked with a number of companies, and this is just smart business. I remember there's a company up in the Northeast, and they were going to bring me on as a consultant, and they were doing about, I think it was probably $3 or $4 million. Not a big company, not a small company.
Yeah, doing good.
They had two major clients, and it was two of the big banner insurance companies, and they lost one of them. He didn't hire a consultant. I think he ended up, I don't know if his business is still around. I know he is, but I don't know if he still has the same business. So what they're going to be looking for is client dependence. And so the formula that I recommend, no more than 20% of your work from a single client. I'd like to think it is no more than 10% from a single client. So therefore, I could lose them and it doesn't hurt my business. The person buying my company could lose one of your major clients because of the relationship they have with you. It's not going to hurt the business. So client dependence is going to be an extremely important thing. And so from a marketing standpoint, it's not that I don't want to take my largest clients and say, stop sending me so much work. My strategy is go find everybody else and say, give me more work. Yeah. And then we're going to grow on both of those, and we're going to level them up together. So I think that's what I look at, client dependence.
And to add to that, Phil, sorry to interrupt, but I think, and speak to this with your clients and your experience, I think we see that very often with TPAs and DRPs now too, because it's just the easy thing to do sometimes. As far as business development, now operationally and profitability, it can be somewhat of a challenge, but knocking on doors and going and marketing and doing kind of those efforts are very challenging. So it can be very easy to get comfortable with those TPAs, and then you're chugging along, and then you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm in the situation of your friend where I've got my business split in two, and if one goes, I'm toast.
So you had different questions, yeah. So you had consolidation on one, TPAs on the other. So one of the things that you all should look at, and this is really important, if you sell your company, you can't always sell that relationship with the TPA. They make the new company start over again and requalify, and they'll slow walk the new work in to make sure things are still consistent.
Interesting.
I know that to be a fact, and there's ways around that, but that is the contract that most people sign. There's ways around it, and they're reasonable. The TPAs need good contractors, but be aware of that. Be aware. So I did just work with a company.
That's a big point. That's a big point when you're preparing to exit. Yeah.
I work with two, and it depends on whether you have a strategic buyer. So if they're already a part of the TPA, they're like, known commodity, perfect. Or a new PE company or a new just strategic whoever that doesn't work with them, they don't have that relationship, just get to roll in. So now all of a sudden you eliminated a bunch of your buyers potentially. I have had talks at high levels with a number of the TPAs, and they made exceptions because they're like, okay, the owner's sticking around and they're a quality company and whatever. But they said, but we're watching. We're watching really, really close. We're scrutinizing. So understand that that's a limitation and a fact. But I'll tell you that I've worked with two companies. They were both about the same story. They were doing around $20 million. They were making about 20% EBITDA, and they both had about 90% of their work coming through TPAs. Those were very valuable companies. But they didn't have that many buyers. They only had a couple buyers, but the buyers that were there saying, okay, we like this. We like the model. We can scale this. We can do lots of stuff with it. So they got their price, but it was hard. It wasn't an easy sale because everybody said, oh, TPA concentration, we don't like that. And they walked away. And so the TPA concentration is a challenge. It's real. You can work with it. There are people that would say, okay, that's fine. We understand that world, and we think we can leverage that into other offices, and we can do something with that. but know that not everybody thinks that. And so the TPA model is different. And so, we talked about just the client dependence. If I continue on my list if you want.
I'd love it. I'm just interrupting you every once in a while, but
that's
please.
okay.
I love it.
It's a good conversation. Systemize operations. Again, it's that system gets us predictable results. If you have built that into your company, then people can buy that because they want predictable results. They don't want people that perform process. They want process performed by interchangeable people, good people. But if they went away, it's not stuck with that. And so that's I'll do a product pitch here. That's why I like know-how. Know-how makes it easy to create systems. They create a system to create systems.
Yeah.
Isn't that brilliant?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be them. You know what? Through AI now, I can create systems really quickly with Claude. You mentioned that earlier. What a powerful tool. So that one's going to cost me $20 a month. Unless I wanted the programming part, I'm going to pay some more, but it didn't have to be a lot. So where was I on that? Getting close to my list here. So system, leadership team, we talked about that before. Cash generating machine. If I've got positive cash flow, that's great. If I've got a $1 million line of credit, that complicates things a little bit because the buyer says, I've got a business where I'm going to have to really get lots of capital and throw the capital in there. And so it's less valuable. Companies that are profitable, cash rich, are more valuable than companies that are profitable but cash poor. So those systems and all of that start leading to profitable companies and strong cash flow. And then there was two things that I think it's important. The first one is this is something that a buyer looks at and says, this is really fantastic, because then they can then model it somewhere else. If you've got a process that helps you achieve really strong gross profit margins, that'll then increase and enhance your multiple on your net profit margins. Gross profit margins. So strong gross profit margin, strong net profit margin. And then I think probably the last one, and this was one that surprised me, and this is sort of an outlier, but it connects with all that TPA stuff. I was surprised to learn that PE companies value the SEO type leads more than relationship leads, more than vendor programs.
Stable. Yeah.
They understand
it's not as managed. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Closing rates are lower. Sometimes the profitability is lower. There's a lot of cash jobs. There's a lot of reasons why you don't want to do it. However, if you have a robust stream of SEO and organically driven leads, they're going to value that higher than if it's a relationship. I was surprised by that. So that brings me, that is, you do those things. We talk about creating a business that operates without you. We add those elements into it. Now we have a profitable business that buyers are gonna compete for you.
So that I think what you mentioned is helping increase the EBITDA multiple, not necessarily the EBITDA, but the EBITDA multiple. What EBITDA multiple are you seeing with these exits, whether it's PE or individual that's buying the registration company? What's a poor middle of the road good that you're seeing right now?
So that's a really tough question to answer. So I'm going to give you an answer, but it's tough to answer because everybody's numbers are generated differently and they mean something differently. So meaning, how do I do my accounting? What is the nature that I'm recognizing revenue? What is my profitability real? People's financials are typically a mess, and so they're going to look at something and get the wrong answer on it. So I'm just going to tell you that the first good, let's just say if I have one metric that compares everything else, that I can give you the number based on that. So take a strong quality of earnings. So if you think about selling your business, go hire somebody to do a quality of earnings report. So what they're going to do is they're going to scrub your numbers for you before you ever sit down with a buyer, and they're going to tell what your real profitability was. They're going to do your add backs. They're going to figure out, like an add back. So if you hire a consultant, then the buyer doesn't need the consultant. So the buyer is going to say, okay, let's pretend you didn't. Let's pretend you pay that. Or you're going to hire your wife and she doesn't really do anything in the office and she has a nice company car. They won't need that either. So those are all add backs. So you get a quality of earnings report. And let's say we have a good quality of earnings report. The numbers that I'm seeing at the low end are in the mid threes, which is crazy. I'm going to run my company for 3 years and just take that money and earn the profits and run it myself. But the mid threes, and this changed because of what's going on in the finance markets, what's going on with interest rates, what's going on with deficits and everything else. So the cost of capital just got higher, and so mid threes would be the low end. I'd say so. Then we're gonna just take the high end. You can average it out in between there. I've seen in the mid eights.
Okay.
Because so if you think about it, people are thinking I'm going to get,
which is insane. That's like almost, yeah.
Well,
it's almost
you know what?
Strategy.
Yeah, Mike. I would tell you that one of the big national PE companies has done multiple roles of restoration. The last one that okay, statements of fact of opinion. Statement of fact is something I know to be true. Statement of opinion is something I believe to be true. Okay, so this is a statement of opinion because I believe this to be true. I've heard this through credible sources. I never saw the numbers. They sold for a 16 times multiple. Unbelievable.
Insane.
It was nearly a $500 million revenue company, but I could go and do the same thing with a tech company. I could go buy stock, and I don't have any risk on that, and then I can get the same type of PE. They're just saying, hey, I know that I can grow this platform, and I can then scale and grow it, but they're not going to get 17 the next turn. And there's a platform company maybe getting up to around 10. There's just few exceptions where you can get some really, really good numbers, but there's not a lot of those. I'm working with a company that's got such a solid net profit margin. They're a specialty services company right now, and their net profit is, let's say it's north of 30%. And because I think people can scale it, I think that company may be able to get to a 10x on their multiple, but that's pretty rare. And I'm coaching him to say think 7, and if you get 10, that's unbelievable. But think 7.
Be happy with it. Yeah.
Yeah. And frankly, look what's going on in the private debt markets right now. So that's where all this money is coming from. So the private debt market is a real mess right now. If you study the Financial Times, just a financial report, just see what's going on. And they're pulling money out of these private debt markets because they're needing it's being called somewhere else. And so they're having to liquidate all these private debt deployments. And so that's impacting mid-level PE-backed firms. And the cash is going out. So supply demand. If the supply of money goes, then the cost of what they're going to be able to sell or what they're able to buy for is diminished, and their ability to turn that again. So it's real complicated. It's changing.
To go to that point, it might be too early to tell with this. So what did you say? Statement of opinion, statement of fact. This is a statement of opinion, clearly. But I mean, there was just so much cash injection to tech, right? I mean, it was just insane. The multiples were insane.
Yeah.
Most of that is being disrupted by AI. Now it's all being transferred over to AI, but a lot of this is going, developers, computer programmers, that's going to be a challenge. And that's yet to be seen. Do you see that these PE companies will start shifting more to service companies? Or do you see that EBITDA multiple increasing because that money needs to be parked somewhere?
Well, there's less money.
Question.
So, no, and there's, so this is kind of a subjective argument. Because the cost of that money is so high, and I've sat in boardrooms where PE companies are trying to figure out where their next level of capital is coming from, and I was blown away at how much the PE companies were paying in interest, like they're paying to get their money, and it was well north of 10 and close to 20, and I was blown away. And so, and that was back when interest rates were low. And so I guess looking at that, the PE companies are, yes, they're going to have to find a place to park the money, but does restoration seem to be the best spot? Restoration's had a couple down years, and if you've noticed what's happening with some of these national players, they've really struggled. We'll go to, you had mentioned we talk about trends. I want to talk about trend for a minute. One of the things you look at is you got all these what they call them climate change issues, and saying, okay, restoration is a good place, but last 2 years, take a look at really what happened. The average market that didn't get hit by a catastrophe was down and down substantially. Last year was down 30 to 40% from the previous year. Yeah. That's a lot. Yeah. Well, so why that happened? I think at least here's my opinion again, state fact opinion. My thought on that is that the insurance companies are running scared of the catastrophe risk. They can't price it into policies. They don't know what to do with it. So they're trying to make the average claim hard to file. They don't, so deductibles are going up. Copays are going up. They're putting depreciation on roofs and on interior stuff. They're doing different types of insurance policies to try to get around it. And so the average claim makes it harder to file. So there's fewer average claims because there might be a lot of claims from an event. And when the events don't happen, the insurance companies have a really fantastic year. Like last year, their underwriting profits were phenomenal. And so PE companies might just go invest in insurance instead because they're making lots of money.
Because the money's not there.
Yeah. But nonetheless,
and they're decreasing their risk by by low limits. Is that what you're seeing then?
They're decreasing the risk by it's high deductibles. It's depreciating. Okay. It's depreciating roofs. It's depreciating the policy. Doing AC values on the whole policy because the price of This was a really enlightening story or a moment for me 2 years ago. I'm sitting with a client in Dallas, Texas, and he just got. So restoration was his second run around. He had made money in other businesses. I don't know. I never saw his house. I'm going to assume he was living in, let's say it's a $1 million house. And his insurance policy in that house, maybe it was $5 million. I never saw his house. But let's say $1 million for the example. His policy comes in at renewal, his insurance policy. He had a $3,000 premium, and it went to $20,000 at renewal. I'm like, holy smokes.
That's insane.
And he says, Phil, I'm going to shop this around. I'm pretty sure I'll get it to $10,000. So his policy, he did get it at $10,000. His premium went from $3,000 to $10,000. It went up 300%. And his deductible went from 1% of policy to 3% of policy. So now his deductible went from $10,000 to, again, the theoretical $1 million house. There's a lot of those in Dallas. From $10,000 to $30,000. And then I'm thinking, okay, the average restorer, what's their average claim size?
Yeah.
9,000, 12,000. Yeah. Let's say it's a large, and it's 18,000. If my deductible went to 30,000, it's a cash business. And so those dynamics change. And you look at the average homeowner who, if it's what I have read, if that's true, that it was 60% of the country is living paycheck to paycheck, and they don't have $500 for an emergency emergency expense. What's a deductible? It's an emergency expense. I don't have $500 for my $10,000 deductible. And if we're talking about 60%, that doesn't mean that means it's everybody. It could be that $1 million house, and it could be the $40,000 trailer, whatever it is. People are in those same spots, and so the claims start drying up. And so we're saying, okay, we're in a catastrophe-resistant business, or a catastrophe, recession-resistant. That's the word I'm looking for. Recession-resistant. We're in a recession-resistant business, and we also have these other impacts. Okay, and there's all these storms that are happening. Well, if you're in the middle of where a hurricane hit, you're going to be busier than you could ever imagine. If you're sitting in Kentucky and you didn't have a tornado or hurricane, you wouldn't have a tornado that year, and you didn't have straight line winds, and you didn't have freezing pipes.
Yeah,
you're just sitting with 30% less claims than you used to have, and so all of those things are impacts, and that's reality of what's going on in the restoration world. So how do we drive and control that? How do we build a business that exists around that? How do we build a business that's growing in that? If we can grow through those types of things, then when those events happen, that's all gravy. But we're making money Monday to Friday. And I think that those are healthy companies, and it requires deliberate strategic action to make those things happen.
Are you seeing restoration companies, because of this change in landscape of the insurance companies, are you seeing them become more B2C centric and process driven?
Some people are looking at that.
Has the industry caught up to that yet? I don't know.
Well, so one of the things I recommend my clients, and I don't see a lot of just, let's say, companies outside of the ones I'm working. I have conversation at trade shows, and some of those stories never come up. The companies I'm working with are saying, okay, I need financing options. I need a place to go give the customer a way to get money so they can hire me, either to do the full repairs or to pay for their deductible or whatever it is, because they're telling me they can't get started on a job. So. Yeah, I think there's some of that. There's people who are looking and saying, okay, my claim's down 30%. Can I go replace it? Can I do something different? So you take a franchise model, the One Tom Plumber model, which I like One Tom, but I could do it myself. I'm going to go buy a company that does plumbing that allows me to get first notice of loss, because now I know that there was a water loss in a house before the insurance company does. Or before the customer. So at that point, I'm there, did the plumbing work. They're really happy with it. I could bring my restoration company in. We got a financing option if you can't afford your deductible or whatever it is. And so it's a turnkey package. That's that system. So yes, I do see some of that. But at the same time, in some markets it's still the same. In some markets, prices haven't changed. The premiums didn't go up, deductibles didn't go up, everything's normal. There's just not a lot of risk.
I'm in Columbus, Ohio, so it just, we don't have the hurricanes, we don't have the coastal, we don't have the earthquakes, we don't have the fires, so for us, in our small market, what's that?
You have in the spring, you're going to have straight line winds, and you're going to have a lot of heavy rains that are going to come. And what I really hate about the rainstorms is it's not covered by insurance. And those, so we go back to cash market. We got flood water, and it's class 3, category 3, and people don't have the money to fix it, and so it's really kind of messy. I'd rather have a good freeze every now and then.
Yeah. Well, we spent a lot of time here. Is there anything that we didn't cover? I know you had some tools as well you wanted to mention, but I just kind of wanted to open up to you to see if there's anything that we missed.
There's probably a couple things. So I'll talk about some of the things I have. But one of the things I like to talk about that I thought it's always a fun thing, it had to do with company culture. And so, you thought of, how does company culture play a role in this?
Yes.
And one of the things, I'm going to call it the cry test. I was with a client of mine, and they had probably 100 employees, maybe 75, sitting in their monthly meeting, and they did monthly meetings every month, and it was a pep rally. They'd have breakfast for the crews, and they would celebrate great things. They'd have fun. And in that meeting, somebody started crying. And what it dawned on me, I wrote an article about it, and it's in a company meeting, if somebody in your company starts crying, is it a good thing or a bad thing?
That's true.
And,
that's a good point.
And that goes down to, it's a test of company culture. And this company, she was crying because she was pointed out by one of her peers for going above and beyond, for doing extra work to make sure the paperwork was submitted on time on a weekend when this person was already busy doing something else with their family. And the manager wanted to point her out for doing something exceptional. And she was so touched at being recognized in front of her peers that it made her cry. And so company culture is deliberately crafted and created. And whether you think you did that or not, your company has a culture. It's an accidental culture. And so is it a positive one? Is it one that builds people up? Is it a fun culture? Do people want to be there? Do they want to contribute? This is a value multiplier. It's a value multiplier. People will will pay extra for a company with a really phenomenal culture. And that company did sell. And that company sold for one of the higher earnings that I'd ever seen for a private company being bought in the space. And so, and it was largely driven off of, some of it was the location, the city they were in. But a lot of it was the company culture and the passionate employees that really cared about being there. And so think about company culture. And one of the things, I think there was a question of like one of the most common problems you find in companies you're working with, and there's probably 5 or 6 different things, but one of the things we didn't talk about in our presentation here was accountability. Accountability, it's a two-way street, by the way. Accountability isn't I'm going to punish you when you don't do something right, and I'm going to yell at you when you don't do something right. It's also, so consequences for wrong or poor behavior is one level, and then celebration for achievement is the other. You have to do both. If you want, I'm not going to yell at my employees, but if I want to come down on, if I want to be an effective manager, and I celebrate and pat them on the back, and I told them they're doing a great job, and I celebrated accomplishment and achievement, that's great. And now, because I did that, and somebody doesn't perform, one of my most powerful, let's say, accountability moments can be, I can sit across the table from them and say, "Hey, Mike, I'm really disappointed in your performance here." Like, "Oh, I disappointed you, and you're my number one fan. I really feel..." So accountability means that we have expectations and we have consequences for not achieving things. And too often we tolerate poor performance that leads to a whole bunch of other downstream problems across the board in our company. And so accountability is really, really important to tie people into celebrating success and having consequences, not punishing, having consequences for not. So that requires we have good expectations, we have clarity in what we're doing, we have strong KPIs, and people understand and buy into what they're trying to achieve. Yes, Mike, I think I can sell $1 million, and I think I can do that with a 47% gross profit margin. I bought and own that result now.
Yep.
I own that result. Now I can be accountable to that. So I think those are the two things we didn't really touch on, and I think they're really powerful in what we're doing. So that being said, hey, I'd love to talk a little bit about what we can do for restores.
So that was my next thing. So what's a client look like for you? What's kind of low-lying fruit that you can help attack? And I'd love to hear about that.
So my core business, we're business consultants, we're change agents, and so we typically help companies who are at a certain spot and they want to be somewhere else. So somebody, a typical client maybe would. So let's talk about usually between north of 3 million in revenue. So typically 4 to 50 million in revenue, and they want to be and do something a little bit different than where they are. And they need the support. They need some outside influence who has been in the restoration industry. Each one of my consultants has been in the industry for well over 20 years, has been in senior management positions, who has been working in the consulting world for quite a while. So if you're looking for somebody who knows that, who you want to help craft that plan to see and know where you're going and then walk you through the process, that's what we do. And so typically our engagement is somewhere 2 to 5 years, but along the way, we're paying for ourselves every step of the way, and we're increasing value in the company, improving profitability. So all of those things, if you find yourself, there's a lot of people call and say, "Hey, we've been stuck at 5 million for 5 years and we just can't seem to break through." So we come and say, "Okay, just our first meeting is to go through and meet everyone in your company and have a good." It depends how big you are. Sometimes it's doing confidential questionnaires, and we get to hear from them, and we meet a large percentage of the people doing the work, and then provide feedback and direction on a strategic plan, and then we walk you through that process. So that's our core consulting business, and we've been doing that for.
Phil, are you looking at everything, operational, financial, leadership? Is there a core competency that you really are effective with, or are you kind of like, "Hey, let's do a triage first, see what's going on, and then kind of attack it from there"?
Organizational change, I sort of look like a ball of yarn. And if you have a string hanging out on the other side over here and saying, "I need sales help," you start pulling on that, and it knots up over here on the other side. So the reality is we can do everything. We typically do because that's part of that. They're just part of the process. But our let's say we're really good with people. We're really good with process. We're good with strategy. One of the favorites, if your company wants to sell in 5 years, we'll come in and work through the process. And I call it, the last 2 years, I call it my better than free. Because for the last 2 years, we're 100% add back. Yeah. And then the better than free is you have to cash flow it. You have to cash flow it. But you're going to be paid everything back when you go sell the company times 5. Or times 6, or times 7, or whatever it is. And so, so helping companies get ready to sell and transition. But if maybe it's an internal sale, maybe it's helping family business succession. All of these things that just happen in the life cycle of a business. We help in all of those areas. I do have a couple of virtual products that would help very specific situations. So one of them is I took most of what we talked about today. I put it into a program called Max Value. It's a 9 video series. They're 9 20-minute videos, and then supporting documents, job descriptions, process procedure, whatever. And that one's a really it's under a $500 program, and it's just pace yourself, and I'll guarantee if you don't like it, I'll give you your money back.
Nice.
And the next one is we've got a program. It's called Clients for Life, and then it's a sales team success. So that helps you build your commercial sales team. The sales team success. It's a program that helps you hire, onboard, train, and push your marketing and business development people into the commercial space and be more effective in that. And then the Clients for Life is building a commercial sales program in your company. And so you could go, there's a number of people out there that do a really good job of helping you manage your salespeople. This is a turnkey program. You buy it once, you never have to pay for it again. It gets you the foundation. It's sort of almost like a franchise model of building a sales program. And it's got in systems, it's got the agreements with the contractors, it's got promotional marketing recommendations, all that. It's turnkey. It's really fantastic. So,
and it's all videos, so you can take it whenever you want to.
It is, and there's a catered model. So somebody would help you walk you through the process. So you can either buy it and just turnkey do it yourself, or there would be a guided program, and one of my consultants who is really good in that space, he's came out of the franchise world, but he built and grew a restoration company, and then he started this virtual sales program with me, and so he'll walk you through the.
How are they buying that? Where do they go if they're interested in learning more
all those virtual products are on my affiliated website. It's restorationtrainingonline.com. restorationtrainingonline.com, and you'll be able to find all the information there. And if they're interested in the consulting, so just to confuse you and give you two options, it's businessmentors.net. And they can find all sorts of information on how to contact me there. If they do a request for information, it will actually show up on my inbox. And I do have a business development rep that works on that with me. But
if they're interested in working with you as a consultant, what's the first? I mean, that's the first step, is reaching out to you. But what's the first kind of thing to do? Is it getting on a conference call with you and just exploring options? Is that how it typically works? Yeah.
If they're interested, just send an email through the site, and then I will reply back to that. And on that, I have my calendar. It's self-serve, grab time. We'll have probably an hour conversation, learn a lot about your business, and we'll figure out if there's a need. One of the things that we do is we qualify you as you're qualifying us. We want to make sure you're change friendly. We want to make sure that there's something that we see we can do to help add value to your business. We want to make sure that we're going to give you a return on your investment. So all that stuff we're learning about, and then you're learning about us and how we work. And so from that 1 hour conversation, then we'll figure out where we go from there. And sometimes it's a great fit. Sometimes I just want to learn about what you do and get more information, and then I'll consider it. So sometimes it takes years for somebody to get to the spot where they say, the pain is enough, I'm finally going to hire you. And sometimes it's that first conversation.
Yeah. Great. Well, thanks, Phil. I really appreciate it. It's an absolute honor to talk to you. So I certainly can tell that you've got a wealth of knowledge. So thanks for sharing some of it with us today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you betcha. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. See ya.
Bye.